Marco Santini didn't believe in miracles, but standing in his Fifth Avenue mansion on Christmas Eve with snow melting off his Armani coat, he wondered if the weeping woman blocking his path might be his last chance at salvation. Elena Reyes, his mother's live-in maid, clutched a rosary in trembling hands and whispered words that stopped his heart. "She's dying, Mr. Santini, and she's been calling your name." The world tilted. Marco Santini, the man who controlled Manhattan's underworld, who had ordered deaths with a phone call, who made powerful men kneel, felt his knees weaken. "How long?" His voice came out raw, stripped of its usual command. "Hours." Elena's tears fell freely now. "Maybe less. I'm so sorry, Mr. Santini. I tried to reach you. Dozens of calls, text messages. But Miss Valentina said." Valentina. The name turned to poison on his tongue. "She said you were too busy, that I shouldn't disturb you during the Christmas negotiations." Elena stepped closer, desperate urgency replacing her usual deference. "But your mother kept asking for you, every day for 3 weeks. Where's my Marco? Why hasn't he come?" The marble foyer, decorated with thousands of dollars worth of Christmas ornaments, suddenly felt like a tomb. All this wealth, all this power, and he hadn't known his own mother was dying. "There's something else." Elena pressed something into his hands. A stack of sealed envelopes, yellowed with age. "She's been writing to you. Every Christmas you didn't come home. 17 letters, Mr. Santini. One for every year you've been gone." Marco stared at the letters. His mother's elegant handwriting on each envelope. Christmas 2007. Christmas 2008. Christmas 2009. A chronicle of absence. A testament to love he'd never known existed. "She made me promise." Elena's voice broke. "Promise that you'd read them before she's gone." She said, "Even if he doesn't come, make sure he knows I never stopped loving him. Make sure he knows I understand why he stayed away." In the reflection of the floor-to-ceiling windows, Marco could see the man he'd become. Tattooed, hardened, powerful. A stranger to the boy who'd once prayed with his mother at Christmas Mass. "Where is she?" he asked, his hand already moving toward the grand staircase. "The West Wing. Your old bedroom." Elena grabbed his arm with surprising strength. "Mr. Santini, there's something you need to know before you go up there." The desperation in her eyes told him this was about more than his mother's death. "Miss Valentina has been lying to her, telling her you visit all the time, that you've become the man she always hoped you'd be. Your mother thinks you come every week, that you hold her hand, that you've left the life." Elena's grip tightened. "She doesn't know you haven't been home in 6 months. She doesn't know you're still what you are." Understanding crashed over Marco like a wave. His mother was dying believing a beautiful lie. And Valentina, his fiancée, the woman he'd trusted with everything, had constructed that lie to keep them apart. "Why?" The question emerged as a growl. "I don't know." But Elena's eyes said she did know. Said there were secrets more terrible than a dying woman's false peace. "But I couldn't let her die without seeing her son one more time, even if it costs me everything." Marco looked at the trembling maid who had risked her job, perhaps her life, to bring him home. Then he looked at the letters in his hands. 17 Christmases. 17 years of unconditional love he'd been too consumed by power to acknowledge. From somewhere upstairs, carried on the current of warm air from the heating vents, came a sound that shattered what remained of Marco's carefully constructed armor. His mother's voice, weak and distant, singing, "Silent Night, Holy Night," the Christmas carol he remembered from childhood. The song she'd sung to him when he was afraid of the dark. When the world was simple. When he was still her good boy. Marco's vision blurred. The most dangerous man in New York, the man who never cried, never showed weakness, stood in his marble foyer on Christmas Eve with tears streaming down his tattooed face. "How much time?" he asked again. Elena checked her watch. The doctor said midnight. Maybe less if her heart gives out sooner. Marco looked at his own watch. 6:47 p.m. 5 hours. 5 hours to undo 17 years of absence. 5 hours to read 17 letters. 5 hours to say goodbye to the only person who'd ever loved him unconditionally. "Take me to her," he said, his voice steady despite the tears. "And Elena," he turned back, meeting her eyes, "thank you for being braver than I was." As they climbed the stairs toward his dying mother, Marco Santini carried 17 letters in his hands and 17 years of guilt in his heart. Behind him, in the shadows of the foyer, Valentina De Luca watched with cold calculation in her eyes. She raised her phone to her ear, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against the screen. "We have a problem," she whispered into the receiver. "He's here." The West Wing had once been Marco's sanctuary. Now it had been converted into something between a bedroom and a hospital room. Medical equipment beeped softly in the corner. An oxygen machine hummed. The smell of antiseptic couldn't quite mask the underlying scent of death, that particular sweetness that clings to the dying. But none of that mattered when Marco saw her. Rosa Santini lay in the center of an ornate four-poster bed. Propped up on pillows embroidered with flowers she'd stitched herself decades ago. She was 72 years old, her once vibrant black hair now completely white, her skin like tissue paper stretched over delicate bones. But when she opened her eyes and saw him standing in the doorway, those eyes, the same dark brown as his own, lit up with joy so pure it broke something inside him. "Marco, you came for Christmas." Her voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of 17 years of waiting. "I knew you would. I told Elena you would never miss Christmas." Marco's throat closed. She thought he'd been here, thought he'd been visiting. Valentina's lies had given her peace, but they'd stolen his chance to make things right while his mother still knew the truth. "Mama." He crossed the room in 3 strides and knelt beside her bed, taking her hand in his. Felt so small, so fragile, like holding a bird. "I'm here. You're always here, my darling boy." She smiled, her fingers patting his cheek. "Every week, just like you promised. My good son who comes to read to me." Her eyes drifted closed, then opened again, confusion flickering across her face. Or was that yesterday? The days blur together now. Elena stood in the doorway, her expression a mixture of grief and guilt. The doctor, a distinguished man in his 60s, approached Marco quietly. "Mr. Santini, I'm Dr. Morrison. Your mother's been in and out of consciousness for the past week. The cancer has spread to her brain. Sometimes she's lucid. Sometimes she thinks it's 20 years ago. Sometimes." He glanced at Rosa with infinite sadness. "Sometimes she thinks you've been here all along." "How long has she been like this?" 3 weeks. But she's been sick for over a year." Dr. Morrison's tone carried reproach. "She didn't want you to know. She specifically instructed Miss De Luca not to tell you until it was almost over. She didn't want you coming home out of obligation." Marco felt each word like a physical blow. His mother had been dying for a year, and he'd known nothing. Had been building his empire, making deals, eliminating threats, while cancer ate away at the only person who'd ever truly loved him. "Thank you for yesterday's visit, Marco." Rosa's voice pulled him back. She was looking at him with such contentment. "You read me that story about the Christmas angel. It was beautiful." "Mama, he stopped. What could he say? That he hadn't been here yesterday? That he hadn't been here in 6 months? That every visit she remembered was a fiction constructed by Valentina to keep her peaceful? Elena moved to the other side of the bed, gently adjusting Rosa's pillows. "Mrs. Santini, would you like some water?" "Elena, my sweet girl." Rosa's hand reached for the maid's. "You take such good care of me, like the daughter I never had." She looked at Marco. "You should marry her, you know. Not that Valentina. This one has a good heart." Marco's eyes met Elena's across the bed. In that moment, he saw something he hadn't expected. Genuine love for his mother shining in the maid's eyes. Not duty, not obligation, real affection. "Rest now, Mama," Marco whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm not going anywhere. You never do." Rosa smiled, her eyes already closing. "My good boy. Always here. Always." Her breathing evened out, deepened. Sleep had claimed her, offering temporary escape from the pain. Dr. Morrison checked her vitals, then gestured for Marco to follow him out into the hallway. Elena came too, closing the door softly behind them. Her heart is failing, the doctor said without preamble. The cancer has metastasized throughout her body. We're keeping her comfortable with morphine, but there's nothing more we can do. It's a matter of hours now. Midnight at the latest. Marco looked at his watch again. 7:15 p.m. Less than 5 hours. Why wasn't I told? His voice was deadly quiet. A year. She's been sick for a year, and no one thought to inform me that my mother was dying. Dr. Morrison shifted uncomfortably. Miss DeLuca said you were handling sensitive business matters, that the stress might compromise your work. She said she'd tell you when the time was right. The time was right a year ago. Marco's hands clenched into fists. The tattoos on his knuckles, symbols of the life he'd chosen, seemed to mock him now. What good was all his power if he couldn't even protect his own mother? If he couldn't even be there when she needed him most? Elena touched his arm gently. Mr. Santini, there's something I need to show you, before Miss Valentina returns. She led him down the hallway to a small sitting room that had once been his father's study. Inside, she pulled out a manila folder from behind a row of books. I've been working here for 18 months, Elena said, her voice low and urgent. Your mother hired me herself before she got too sick. She was kind to me, patient. She treated me like family. She opened the folder, revealing call logs, text messages, and printed emails. 3 weeks ago, when Mrs. Santini's condition worsened, I started trying to contact you. 47 calls, 63 text messages, all of them intercepted by Miss Valentina. Marco stared at the evidence. Dozens of messages from Elena, all desperate. Mrs. Santini is asking for you. Please, Mr. Santini. She's getting worse. She may not have much time left. And Valentina's responses, sent from Marco's own phone. I'm aware. Do not disturb me with this again. The old woman is fine. Stop being dramatic. You're fired if you contact me one more time about this. She's been answering your phone? Marco's voice was ice. She has access to all your devices, doesn't she? Your emails, your calls, everything routes through her first. Elena pulled out more documents. And there's something else. These are your mother's medical bills from the past year. Over $2 million in treatments. Experimental therapies. The best doctor's money could buy. Marco took the bills, scanning them. His mother's name. Dates going back 14 months. Treatments he'd never authorized. Bills he'd never seen. Miss Valentina has been paying them, Elena said quietly. Out of accounts she controls. She told your mother you were taking care of everything. That you'd arranged for the best care. Your mother thinks you've been managing her treatment all along. But I never, Marco's mind raced. Valentina controlled several of his business accounts, had signing authority on various funds. It had been a symbol of trust when they'd gotten engaged. A way to legitimize some of his money by running it through her family's connections. There's more. Elena's hand trembled as she pulled out the final document. This is a transfer authorization, dated 3 days ago. The day your mother signed her new will. Marco read it once, twice. His blood turned to ice. The document transferred all of Rosa Santini's assets, including her 51% controlling share in the Santini family holdings, to Valentina DeLuca upon Rosa's death. Not to Marco, to Valentina. Witnessed and notarized. Completely legal. Your mother didn't understand what she was signing, Elena whispered. She thought it was just updating her will to include Valentina as family. Miss Valentina told her it was standard procedure before a wedding. That it would make things easier for everyone. She stole my mother's inheritance. The words came out flat, emotionless. But inside Marco was burning. She's been keeping me away deliberately, letting my mother die alone. Also, she could manipulate a dying woman into signing over everything. It's worse than that. Elena's eyes filled with tears. I wasn't sure until last night, but I heard Miss Valentina on the phone with someone. talking about how once the old woman was gone and the assets transferred, they could move to phase 2. Eliminate the complications. I think, she swallowed hard. I think she's planning something terrible, Mr. Santini, and I think you're the complication. The sound of heels clicking on marble echoed down the hallway. Valentina was coming. How much of this does my mother know? Marco asked quickly. Nothing. She believes everything Miss Valentina told her. She thinks you've been here every week. That you've left the criminal life behind. That you're the good son she always prayed you'd become. Elena gripped his arm. Please don't tell her the truth. Let her die believing you became the man she wanted. Don't let her last moments be filled with disappointment. The study door opened. Valentina DeLuca stood in the doorway, a vision in a blood-red dress that hugged every curve. She was 29 years old, stunningly beautiful, with dark hair cascading over her shoulders and eyes that could seduce or destroy with equal ease. Right now, those eyes were cold with fury. Elena, I believe I told you to stay with Mrs. Santini. Her voice was silk wrapped around steel. I was showing Mr. Santini the Christmas letters his mother wrote, Elena replied, her voice steady despite the fear Marco could see in her eyes. Valentina's gaze shifted to Marco, and her expression transformed instantly into concern. She rushed to him, her hands cupping his face. Darling, I'm so sorry you had to find out this way. I was trying to spare you. You've been under such pressure with the negotiations. Marco looked at the woman he'd planned to marry. The woman he'd trusted with everything. The woman who had stolen his dying mother's final weeks from him. How long have you known? His voice was conversational, almost pleasant. The tone he used right before he killed someone. Valentina didn't flinch. She's been sick for a while, but the doctors said it could be months, maybe a year. I didn't want you to worry unnecessarily. I was handling everything. Handling everything. Marco stepped back, breaking her touch. Is that what you call intercepting my messages? Preventing my mother from seeing me? Lying to her about my visits? Something flickered in Valentina's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, that he knew. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by wounded innocence. Marco, you don't understand. Your mother was confused. She kept asking for you, and it broke my heart to see her so distressed. So I told her you were visiting. It gave her peace. I did it for her. You did it for her. Marco pulled out his phone, scrolling through the messages Elena had shown him. 47 calls from Elena. All blocked. All deleted. You did that for my mother too. Valentina's mask began to crack. The girl was being hysterical. Your mother was fine. I was keeping you informed of everything that mattered. Everything that mattered. Marco took out the transfer document. Like my mother signing over her controlling shares to you? That was her choice. Valentina's composure shattered completely. She wanted to make sure I was taken care of. That we were family. It's what she wanted, Marco. You manipulated a dying woman. Marco's voice dropped to a whisper. You kept me away deliberately. You made her think I was here, that I'd changed, that I'd become someone I'm not. Also, you could steal her company, her legacy, everything my father built. Steal. Valentina laughed, but there was desperation in it now. I've been managing your affairs for 2 years. I've been legitimizing your money, running it through my family's businesses. Without me, you'd still be nothing but a street thug with delusions of empire. I made you, Marco. And yes, I made sure I'd be compensated for it. The truth, finally. Raw and ugly. Get out of my house, Marco said quietly. Your house. Valentina's eyes flashed. This house is mortgaged through my family's bank. Those cars in your garage. Leased through my father's company. Your club downtown? My uncle owns the building. You think you built an empire, Marco? You built a house of cards, and I'm holding every single card. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. You need me. Your mother needed me. And if you try to throw me out now, I'll make sure the DeLuca family knows you've become a liability. How long do you think you'll survive without our protection? Marco stared at the woman he'd thought he loved. Saw her clearly for the first time. Predator. a manipulator, someone who had turned his dying mother into a tool for her own ambition. I said get out. Valentina's expression hardened. Fine, but your mother signed those papers. They're legal and binding. When she dies tonight, and she will die tonight, Marco, everything transfers to me. And there's nothing you can do about it. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Marco? Your mother's morphine drip? I've been managing that too. The doctor takes his instructions from me. Just remember that. The threat hung in the air like poison. She was saying she could end his mother's life whenever she chose. That she held that power. After Valentina left, Marco stood in the study, his hands shaking with rage. Elena touched his arm gently. The letters, she said softly. Your mother wanted you to read them. Whatever else happens tonight, she wanted you to have those. Marco looked down at the stack of envelopes he'd been carrying since the foyer. 17 letters. 17 Christmases of love he'd never acknowledged. Will you sit with her while I read? He asked. Of course. They returned to Rosa's room. She was still sleeping, her chest rising and falling with fragile regularity. Marco pulled a chair close to her bed, took her hand in his, and opened the first letter. Christmas 2007 was written in his mother's elegant script. Inside, the paper was thick, expensive. She'd used her good stationery. The letter began, My dearest Marco. His vision blurred as he read his mother's words from 17 years ago. She wrote about his empty chair at Christmas dinner. About the gift she'd wrapped for him anyway. A leather-bound journal, still sitting unopened in her closet. She wrote about understanding why he'd left, why he'd chosen the life. About knowing he'd done it to save her after his father's death, after the medical bills had threatened to destroy them. I would have died 1,000 times, she wrote, rather than lose you to this darkness. But I understand why you did it, my son. You became what you thought you needed to become to protect me. And I love you for it, even as my heart breaks for what it's cost your soul. She ended the letter with a simple prayer. Come home, my son, while there's still time to save yourself. Marco's tears fell on the paper, smudging ink that was nearly 2 decades old. He looked up at his mother's sleeping face. Even now, ravaged by cancer, he could see the beautiful woman she'd been, the one who'd sung him lullabies, who'd bandaged his scraped knees, who'd held him when his father died and whispered that everything would be okay. He'd been 15 then, angry and scared and desperate. The DeLuca family had killed his father over a territory dispute, left them with nothing but debts and threats. Marco had made a choice that night, a choice that had seemed like the only option. He'd gone to the Santini family, his father's distant cousins, and offered himself, his loyalty, his soul, in exchange for protection and money to save his mother. It had worked. Rosa's medical bills were paid. The threats stopped. They moved to this mansion. And Marco had climbed the ranks of the Santini organization, proving himself ruthless enough, smart enough, deadly enough to eventually take control. But his mother had never wanted any of it. He opened the second letter. Christmas 2008. She wrote about lighting a candle for him at midnight, Massachusetts. About praying that wherever he was, whatever he was doing, God would keep him safe. About refusing to believe he was truly lost. The third letter. Fourth, fifth, year after year, his mother had poured her heart onto paper, never knowing if he'd ever read the words. Each letter was a testament to unconditional love. Never condemning, never judging, always hoping, always believing he could still be saved. By the 10th letter, Christmas 2016, her handwriting had begun to shake. I'm not as strong as I once was, she wrote. The doctors say it's nothing serious, but I can feel my body failing. I think of all the Christmases we've missed, and I wonder if I'll see you one more time before I go. Not because I need you to forgive me for any failing as a mother, but because I need you to know that I forgive you. For everything. Always. Marco's chest heaved with silent sobs. Elena, standing by the window, wept quietly into her hands. The 14th letter, Christmas 2020, was different. Shorter. Written in a hospital. I have cancer. his mother had written. They found it too late. But I'm not afraid of dying, Marco. I'm afraid of dying without telling you that you are not what you've done. You are not the violence or the blood or the darkness. You are still my boy. The one who cried when he found a baby bird that fell from its nest. The one who gave his lunch money to homeless men. The one who promised to make the world better. That boy is still inside you. I know it. I've never stopped knowing it. Marco couldn't read anymore. He pressed the letter to his chest and wept openly, the way he hadn't wept since childhood. All these years, he told himself his mother wouldn't understand, wouldn't forgive, that he was protecting her by staying away. But she'd understood everything, had forgiven everything, had been waiting year after year for him to come home. Mr. Santini. Elena's voice was gentle. She's waking up. Rosa's eyes fluttered open. For a moment, confusion clouded her features. Then she saw Marco, saw the tears on his face, saw the letters scattered across his lap. Marco? Her voice was suddenly clear, lucid in the way the dying sometimes become in their final hours. You're really here? Or am I dreaming again? He gripped her hand tighter. I'm here, Mama. I'm really here. She looked at the letters. Understanding dawned in her eyes. Elena gave them to you. Yes. I wrote so many. Every Christmas. I'd sit by the window and write to you, imagining you were reading them. Imagining you knew. A tear slid down her weathered cheek. You've been away so long, my son. So long. The truth hung between them. In this moment of clarity, Rosa knew. Knew he hadn't been visiting. Knew Valentina had lied. Knew this was their first real conversation in years. I'm sorry, Marco choked out. I'm so sorry, Mama. I thought I was protecting you. I thought if I stayed away, built something powerful enough, I could keep you safe. But I was wrong. I was so wrong. Oh, my darling boy. Rosa lifted her hand. It took visible effort and touched his face. You were never wrong to love me. Only wrong to think love required sacrifice. I never needed your empire. I only needed you. I don't know how to be anything else anymore, Marco confessed. The things I've done, Mama. The man I've become. I can't undo it. Can't wash the blood away. I'm not asking you to undo it. Rosa's thumb wiped away his tears. I'm asking you to survive it. To find your way back to who you were before the darkness took you. She paused, gathering strength. Promise me something. Anything. Leave this life. Not for me. I'll be gone soon. Leave it for yourself. While there's still something of you left to save. Her eyes bored into his with fierce intensity. Don't let my death be meaningless, Marco. Let it be the moment you chose life over death. Light over darkness. Love over power. I can't. Marco's voice broke. The DeLucas will kill me if I try to leave. Valentina has her hooks in everything. My businesses, my accounts, my connections. She'll destroy me. Then let her destroy what you've built. Rosa's grip tightened with surprising strength. But don't let her destroy who you are. You're my son. You're Antonio's son. We loved you more than empires. More than money. More than power. And that love, that's the only thing that matters in the end. From the doorway, a voice like ice interrupted. How touching. Valentina stood there, no longer alone. Two men flanked her. Marco recognized them instantly. Carlo and Vincent, DeLuca family enforcers. Professional killers. I told you not to upset my mother, Marco said. His voice deadly calm despite the gun Vincent was now pointing at him. Your mother. Valentina laughed. She stopped being your mother the moment she signed those papers. Everything she has is mine now, including this house. She walked to the bed, looking down at Rosa with cold assessment. The old woman is lucid. That's unfortunate. It would have been easier if she died peacefully in her sleep, still believing her precious son had been visiting. Don't you dare speak to her. Marco started to rise, but Vincent cocked the gun. Rosa's hand tightened on Marco's. It's all right, my son. She looked at Valentina without fear. I know what you are, child. I've known for months. You think I didn't notice you forging Marco's signature on those hospital forms? Didn't hear you on the phone with your father, planning how to liquidate the Santini holdings once I was dead. Valentina's eyes widened slightly. You knew. I'm dying, not stupid. Rosa managed a weak smile. I signed those papers because I wanted you to have exactly what you deserve. Nothing. Those shares you think you're inheriting? They're worthless. I transferred the real controlling interest to a trust 6 months ago. My lawyer has the documents. Everything goes to Marco upon my death. Not to you. Never to you. For the first time, Valentina looked uncertain. You're lying. Call my attorney, Richard Morrison. He has the original trust documents, signed and sealed. The papers I signed for you were duplicates, worthless copies. Rosa's breathing was becoming labored, but her eyes blazed with triumph. Did you really think I'd let my son's future be stolen by a snake like you? Valentina's face transformed into something ugly, mask completely gone. It doesn't matter. Marco will be dead within the hour. My father's men are already moving on his operations. By dawn, the Santini family will be history, and everything will belong to the De Lucas. You're declaring war on me? Marco's voice was ice. Your father authorized this? My father doesn't know. Valentina smiled viciously. He thinks you and I are getting married next month. He has no idea I've been planning to eliminate you for over a year. By the time he finds out, it'll be over. The Santini holdings will be absorbed, and I'll have proven myself worthy of leading the family. She'd gone rogue. A De Luca daughter orchestrating an unauthorized hit on a rival family. If Marco died, the resulting war would destroy both families. But Valentina didn't care. She was gambling everything on a power play. Elena, get out, Marco said quietly. This doesn't concern you. But Elena didn't move. Instead, she stepped forward, placing herself between Marco and the gun. Actually, it does concern me. She reached into her uniform pocket and pulled out a badge. FBI agent Elena Reyes. You're all under arrest. The room froze. Marco stared at the woman who'd been his mother's maid for 18 months. Who'd cared for Rosa with such tenderness. Who'd risked everything to bring him home tonight. You're FBI? Valentina recovered first, laughing. Then arrest us. Call your backup. Oh wait. You can't, can you? Because you're in too deep. You've been living here, caring for a mob boss's mother, probably committing a dozen felonies in the process. You've gone native, Agent Reyes. Elena's hand didn't waver. I turned in my badge 3 days ago. I'm not here in any official capacity. Then why the dramatic reveal? Valentina gestured to her men. Kill them all. The old woman's dying anyway. Make it look like Marco went insane with grief and shot everyone. Everything happened at once. Vincent raised his gun, finger tightening on the trigger. Elena threw herself at Marco, trying to shield him. Rosa screamed, a sound that shouldn't have come from such a frail body, and the door burst open. FBI agents flooded the room, weapons drawn. Federal agents. Hands in the air. Valentina spun, face going pale. Carlo and Vincent dropped their guns immediately, hands raising. But Valentina's hand darted into her purse, pulling out a small pistol. I'm not going to prison. She aimed at Marco, hatred blazing in her eyes. The shot rang out not from Valentina's gun, but from the lead FBI agent. Valentina's pistol clattered to the floor as she grabbed her shoulder, blood blooming across the red silk of her dress. She collapsed, screaming obscenities. The lead agent, a woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair, approached Marco. Mr. Santini, I'm Special Agent Catherine Walsh. Your mother's attorney contacted us 6 months ago with information about money laundering and racketeering in the De Luca organization. We've been building a case since then. Tonight's events just gave us everything we needed. Marco looked at his mother in astonishment. You've been working with the FBI? Rosa managed a weak laugh. I told you, not stupid, just dying. She coughed, blood flecking her lips. I wanted to make sure you'd survive me, Marco. That the vultures wouldn't pick you apart the moment I was gone. Dr. Morrison rushed to her side, checking her vitals. Her heart is failing. The stress. I know. Rosa's voice was fading now. She looked at Marco. Promise me. Promise you'll leave this life. I promise, Mama. And Elena. Rosa's eyes found the former FBI agent standing awkwardly by the window. Take care of my boy. He's going to need someone who sees who he really is. I will, Elena whispered. Good. Rosa smiled, her eyes beginning to close. Marco, read me the last letter. The one marked, when you're finally free. With shaking hands, Marco found it, the 17th letter, sealed but never dated. He opened it carefully and began to read aloud. My dearest Marco, if you're reading this, it means you kept your promise. You found your way home. You chose light over darkness. I won't be there to see it, I've accepted that. But know that I am proud of you. Not for the empire you built or the power you wielded. I'm proud because despite everything, despite all the blood and violence and darkness, you never completely lost yourself. That boy who cried for broken birds is still inside you. Let him out, my son. Let him breathe. Let him live the life I always dreamed you'd have. You gave me years of life by doing what you thought you had to do. Now I give you the rest of yours. Live it well. Live it honestly. Live it with love. That's all any mother wants for her child. All my love. Forever and always, Mama. Marco's voice broke on the final words. He looked up to find his mother's eyes closed, a peaceful smile on her face. Dr. Morrison checked her pulse, then looked at his watch. Time of death, 11:47 p.m. December 24th, 13 minutes before Christmas. The room fell silent except for the gentle beeping of machines being switched off. Marco held his mother's hand and wept, great, racking sobs that came from somewhere deep inside, somewhere he'd locked away for 17 years. Elena knelt beside him, her hand on his shoulder. She didn't speak, didn't offer platitudes, just stayed there, a quiet presence in his grief. Special Agent Walsh approached cautiously. Mr. Santini, I need to ask you some questions, but they can wait until morning. Marco looked up, his face ravaged by tears. She set this up. My mother set all of this up. 6 months ago, her attorney contacted us with documentation of your business arrangements with the DeLuca family. Financial records, meeting transcripts, everything. She'd been collecting evidence for years. Walsh's expression softened. She made us promise we'd offer you immunity in exchange for testimony against the DeLucas. She said you were a good man in an impossible situation, that you deserved a chance at redemption. She always saw more in me than was there. Maybe she saw what was buried. Walsh handed him a business card. We'll need your statement, and we'll need you to testify. In exchange, the federal government is prepared to offer full immunity and witness protection if necessary. I'll testify. Marco looked at his mother's peaceful face. I'll tell you everything. Every deal, every connection, every crime. All of it. After the FBI left with Valentina and her men in custody, Marco sat alone with his mother's body. Dawn was breaking outside Christmas morning. Church bells rang from St. Patrick's Cathedral down the street, celebrating the Day of Miracles. Elena returned with 2 cups of coffee. She sat beside him, and they watched the sunrise together in silence. You really were FBI, Marco finally said. For 12 years. I was assigned to investigate you 18 months ago. Elena stared into her coffee. The plan was to get close through your mother. Learn your routines, your weaknesses. Build a case. What happened? She happened. Elena's voice broke. Your mother was the kindest person I've ever met. She treated me like family. Told me stories about you as a child. Showed me photographs. And slowly I started to see you the way she did. Not as a criminal. As a son who'd made terrible choices for what he thought were good reasons. You fell in love with your target. With the idea of your target. Elena looked at him. I fell in love with the man she described. The one she never stopped believing in. I wanted to meet him. To see if he was real. And now that you have? I think your mother was right. Elena reached out, her fingers touching the letters scattered on Marco's lap. I think that boy she wrote about is still in there. I'd like to meet him when you're ready. Marco looked at the woman who'd risked everything to bring him home, who'd cared for his dying mother with genuine love, who'd seen him at his worst and somehow still believed in his best. I don't know who I am without the empire, he admitted. Without the power and the fear and the violence. I've been Marco Santini, mob boss, for so long. I don't know how to be anything else. Then maybe it's time to find out. Elena squeezed his hand. Your mother gave you a gift, Marco. A way out. A chance to become someone new. Are you brave enough to take it? Marco looked at his mother one last time. Remembered the letters. Remembered her final words. Remembered the boy he'd been before the darkness claimed him. Yes, he whispered. For her. I'll be brave enough. The funeral was small. Marco had insisted on privacy, much to the confusion of his associates who expected a grand mob farewell. Instead, it was just him, Elena, a priest, and a handful of Rose's oldest friends, women who'd known her before the Santini name meant anything. They buried her on a hillside outside the city, in a cemetery where his father already rested. The tombstone was simple. Rosa Maria Santini, beloved mother. Her love never failed. After the mourners left, Marco stood alone at the grave. He'd brought the letters, all 17 of them, and now he placed them in a wooden box and buried it beside the tombstone. I'm going to keep my promise, Mama, he said to the fresh earth. I'm going to testify, help bring down the DeLucas. Then I'm going to disappear, become someone new, someone you'd be proud of. He paused, feeling foolish talking to the ground, but also feeling lighter somehow, as if saying the words out loud made them real. Elena says she'll come with me, into witness protection. Help me figure out who I am when I'm not being Marco Santini. He laughed, but it caught in his throat. I think I love her, Mama. Is that crazy? I barely know her. But she sees me the way you did. Sees possibility instead of just the monster. The wind picked up, rustling through the bare winter trees. It almost sounded like his mother's voice, saying what she'd always said when he was uncertain. Follow your heart, my darling boy. It knows the way home. 6 months later, Marco stood in a different cemetery in a different state under a different name. Antonio Rivera. It was close enough to his father's name to feel right. Distant enough from Marco Santini to be safe. Elena, now Sarah Rivera, his wife of 3 weeks, stood beside him, her hand resting on her swollen belly. 8 months pregnant. Due on Christmas Day. They'd moved to Vermont after Marco's testimony brought down 3 crime families and sent dozens to prison. The FBI had given them new identities, new lives. Marco worked in construction now, building houses instead of criminal empires. The work was honest, hard, and it made him sleep better at night than he'd slept in 17 years. I brought the letter, Sarah said softly, handing him an envelope. It was the one he hadn't read yet. The 18th letter he'd found hidden in his mother's belongings after her death. This one marked, for your first Christmas of freedom. Marco opened it with careful hands, aware that these were possibly his mother's final words to him. Inside, her handwriting was shaky but determined. My dearest Marco, if you're reading this, you kept your promise. You left the darkness behind. You chose life. I'm so proud of you, my son. Prouder than words can express. The road ahead won't be easy. You'll carry scars from the life you left. You'll have nightmares about the things you did. You'll wonder sometimes if you deserve happiness, if redemption is really possible. Let me answer that for you, yes. You deserve happiness. Yes, redemption is possible. And yes, I forgive you, though there was never anything to forgive. You were a boy trying to save his mother. You became a man doing terrible things for what you believed were good reasons. But you're getting a chance now to become something better. Take it. Live fully. Love deeply. And when you have children of your own someday, tell them about their grandmother who never stopped believing in miracles. I love you, my son. Merry Christmas. May all your Christmases from now on be filled with light. Mama. Sarah wrapped her arms around him as he wept. These weren't tears of grief anymore. They were tears of release, of gratitude, of hope. She would have loved to meet her granddaughter, Sarah whispered. She will, Marco replied, one hand moving to rest on Sarah's belly. We'll tell her stories. Show her the letters. Make sure she knows about the woman who saved us both. That night, in their small house with its second-hand furniture and creaky floors, Marco and Sarah decorated a Christmas tree. It was nothing like the elaborate displays in the Fifth Avenue mansion. Just a simple pine with homemade ornaments and lights that flickered occasionally. But it was theirs, honest and real. As midnight approached, Sarah dozed on the couch. Marco sat in the window seat, watching snow begin to fall, and thought about the journey that had brought him here. From mob boss to fugitive, from darkness to light, from Marco Santini to Antonio Rivera. His phone, a simple burner, changed every month for security, buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Catherine Walsh here. Merry Christmas. Your testimony resulted in 47 convictions. The DeLuca organization no longer exists. You're free, Mr. Rivera. Truly free. Your mother would be proud. Marco deleted the message and turned off the phone. He didn't need reminders of that life anymore. Didn't need the validation. He had everything that mattered right here. Sarah stirred, her eyes opening. What time is it? Almost midnight. Almost Christmas. Then come here. She patted the couch beside her. Keep me and your daughter company while we wait for the miracle. Marco joined her, pulling her close. You really think she'll come on Christmas? Your mother's granddaughter? Of course she will. This perfect timing. Sarah smiled. What should we name her? They'd been debating this for weeks. Marco had suggested Rosa, but it felt too raw too soon. Sarah had suggested Maria, but Marco said it was too common. Now, sitting in the quiet peace of their small home on Christmas Eve, the answer came to him clearly. Hope. We'll name her Hope. Hope Rivera. Sarah tested it out. I like it. Why Hope? Because that's what my mother gave me. 17 letters of hope that I'd find my way home. 17 years of believing I could be saved. Marco placed his hand over Sarah's belly, feeling his daughter kick. And because this little girl, born on Christmas Day to parents who started over from nothing, she's proof that hope isn't foolish. It's the most powerful thing in the world. At 12:47 a.m. on Christmas morning, exactly 1 year to the minute from when Rosa Santini had died, Hope Rivera was born. She came out screaming, loud and healthy and very much alive. Marco held his daughter for the first time and felt something inside him that had been broken for 17 years finally begin to heal. This tiny person knew nothing of his past, knew nothing of Marco Santini or his empire of blood and violence. To her, he was just Papa, just the man who would love her unconditionally, just like his mother had loved him. Hi, Hope, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. I'm your dad, and I'm going to tell you about your grandmother who believed in miracles, who taught me that love never fails, who saved me by never giving up. Sarah, exhausted but radiant, reached for his hand. Merry Christmas, Antonio. Merry Christmas, Sarah. Marco kissed his wife's forehead, then his daughter's. Merry Christmas, Hope. Later, when both Sarah and Hope were sleeping, Marco stood at the window of Sarah's hospital room, watching the sun rise on Christmas morning. He thought about his mother, buried in that hillside cemetery. Thought about the letters she'd written year after year, never knowing if he'd read them. Thought about the sacrifice she'd made, turning in her own son to save him. I kept my promise, Mama, he whispered to the brightening sky. I left the darkness. I found the light, and I'm going to raise your granddaughter to know that love is stronger than power. That redemption is always possible. That miracles really do happen. Sometimes they just take 17 years and 17 letters and one dying woman's unshakable faith. Outside, church bells began to ring, celebrating Christmas, celebrating hope, celebrating new beginnings. And somewhere Marco liked to believe his mother was smiling.